Hey, Clemson family, the Tigers' strength of schedule is about to get a big step forward. That means there's a tough opponent up this week in defending Atlantic Division champion Wake Forest.
I'm Daniel Shirley. It's great to be joined by Chapel Fowler from the state. He's going to break down the Tigers and the Demon Deacons for us, talk about Barrett Carter, what an impact he's had on that team, and look ahead to all the big storylines for this week's game.
I'm Bill Zimmerman. Welcome to episode 26 of the Reign Supreme Alway podcast. I want to be your source for analysis of Clemson sports in 2022. We appreciate everyone who's been subscribing and commenting at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Please hit that subscribe and like button for us. Comment on the podcast, and we will try to answer you as quickly as we can. Glad to have people listening via our homepage at ClemsonKickoff.com, obviously on all the major podcast apps, and on Twitter at Clemson Kickoff. Every now and then we'll have a poll. We definitely react to news as it happens in real time there. Well, we're joined now by another one of the top beat writers following Clemson football. This is Chapel Fowler from the state. Chapel, thanks a lot for joining us. Really enjoying your work this season.
Appreciate it, guys. I don't know if I've warranted that kind description at the intro, but definitely working toward that. So happy to be here.
Yeah. And a busy week, too, with Wake coming up. It really kind of accelerates what Clemson needs to take care of. What are you kind of expecting to see that's maybe a little bit same, and then what's going to be a little bit different, too?
Well, I mean, obviously, don't take wins for granted in college football, and Clemson has, said that a lot this year and learned that last year. But, these first three games, how much can you really take away if you're wanting to know how much of a true CFP contender is Clemson? Not too much. For me, this is just a fascinating game because it's that first true test, really, for them this season. The screen game troubles you had against Furman, the first quarter offensive horror show you had against Georgia Tech, you can get away with that against some Paladins and some Yellow Jackets, but I don't know if you can exactly get away with that against the number 21 team in the country. So, I mean, just from a stakes standpoint, I mean, this isn't when the real season starts, but I mean, this is a huge game. And you can't come out flat-footed. And, obviously Clemson's won a lot in a row against Wake, but I mean, kind of the theme of Dabo's presser today and stuff yesterday, they are being really, really intentional, which I think is fair and smart, to point out that Wake is still the defending champion until somebody proves them otherwise, no matter how confident you are, give this team the respect they deserve for what they did last year. Obviously that came with the caveat that Clemson still beat them, but they certainly respect and kind of know what Wake does. I mean, Dabo said today that he's probably spoken more with Clawson than any other coach over the last 3 years, which is a cool nugget that I had never heard. I knew they were friendly, but he kind of went into just how often they've been on conference calls, Zoom calls, phone calls, just talking strategy, talking ball. So there's definitely some respect here, that's on and off the field. So yeah, for me, it's just the fact that this is their first ranked matchup. I think that's going to reveal a lot, good or bad.
Chapel, the thing I want to look at is the defense, and they really shut Wake Forest down last year with a lot of pressure. Do you feel like they're going to try to do that again, or is this just a new defense and they just have to figure out what they're going to be against this kind of an offense?
Well, I look at how Liberty did such an excellent job against Wake last week, run game wise. Clemson has the guys to do that, and I think it starts there. Shut down the run game, make them a little bit more one-dimensional. Dabo mentioned today the reason he thinks Clemson has been so successful against Wake in recent years is exactly that. It's, I think his words are, we found a way to get them off their script, to disrupt their balance and such, that type of thing. And certainly a goal of theirs, but I mean, I think injuries are huge there. It depends on who's back. Obviously, Tyler Davis is a guy that's kind of day-to-day leading into this game. Xavier Thomas still hasn't played yet. I believe Brzee is back with the team and will play. But, you got those guys. And Trey Williams, a backup defensive tackle, is also hurt. Miles Murphy has been, okay, but maybe not the top 10 draft pick potential level that, he was kind of projected to be at. So, that Clemson always has the guys. But, I think that pressure starts with a healthy defensive line, which they don't exactly have right now. So that'll be huge. I mean, I think injuries across the board are kind of the story of the defense for this game. We saw last week what happens when you have to start an experienced guys at corner and play two true freshmen. I mean, it's Louisiana Tech, but still, I mean, their quarterback diced up Clemson a lot of times. I think he had something like 6 or 7 completions of 20 plus yards, something like that. There were some coverage busts, just like there were the week before. Sweeney and Goodwin have both admitted to that. But obviously the reason that's happening is because you're down a starting safety in Makuba and a co-starting cornerback in Wiggins, and Sheridan Jones left in the middle, I think in the first quarter of that game with the stinger. So certainly not the season-ending injury bug that Clemson faced last year, but, a lot of banged-up guys, which happens at this point in any college football season. But I'm interested to see, who of those, I think they were down 5 defensive starters with injury, along with Brzee, who obviously missed the game to be with his family after his sister's passing. So that was, 6 guys that are either starters or co-stars that missed that La Tech game. And how many of those injured guys come back, I think, and really set the tone and really, define how much is Clemson's defense going to be able to disrupt Wake, have that pressure, like you mentioned they've had in recent games in the series.
And they're going to need those guys, right? I mean, Sam Hartman is that good that they really need to be healthy for this game.
Absolutely. My definitely a Sam Hartman fan. My fun fact is I rec league basketball with his older brother Joe Hartman, who's a really nice guy, good small forward, definitely carried our team and passed me the ball when he was feeling nice. Kidding, he was much better than me. But yeah, I mean, Hartman, man, is phenomenal. He's so veteran, smart. Obviously, what he's done in these 2 games after coming off that pretty scary blood clot scare. I think first of all, everyone in the ACC, you could see, how much people care about him and respect him, and kind of the outpouring of support when he, they announced that he was going to be out indefinitely, and how happy everybody was when he got back. He's a gamer. He's smart. He knows coverages. Obviously, knows the playbook like the back of his hand. It's crazy. I feel like I was just watching him play as a true freshman against like Tulane or something. Now he's in his 5th year and just set Wake's career passing yardage record and is top 10 in the ACC. Definitely a guy you can't underestimate. I don't think Clemson is, but Hartman already is scary. Hartman with time in the pocket, that's even scarier. So I mean, yeah, you'd think especially in the secondary, if some of those guys miss another game, that's an area Wake would really want to and probably will take advantage of again. Their wide receivers versus Clemson's lesser defensive backs.
The linebackers have been really good so far, especially that starting group. What do you expect to see out of them Saturday?
And I said this a few days ago, like Barrett Carter is talented enough that he'll make you forget that Clemson lost like 2 like absolute gamers at linebacker last year, Scouty and Spector. Barrett Carter is just like all over the field every single game. It's uncanny. That's one of the main things that stood out to me from the Georgia Tech game. I think he had something like 5 or 6 tackles in the first quarter. I think he had a solo tackle on maybe, 4 of Georgia Tech's first 8 offensive plays. He's really impressive. And it's weird. Like he's been so good that he's almost made Trenton Simpson, fade into the background a little bit, which is crazy considering who Simpson is and what he has been. And he's been excellent this season too. And then at the other spot, Clemson has talked a lot about rotation at that spot, but really, I mean, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., I think he started all 3 of the gagames, which obviously just the first snap of the game, but he's kind of risen above Keith McGuire there. And obviously he had a huge interception last week that really, I think that was a turning point. Clemson was up 13-6. Louisiana Tech comes out. Trotter picks them off on maybe their first or second play of the second half. And Shipley scores a touchdown and suddenly it's 20-6. And, Clemson has a 2-score lead. Those guys, they've been really impressive. But I think going back to what I said earlier, just this is the first big test. This is a big-time ACC offense that's ranked and has put up points for years and has put up points this season. So, Louisiana Tech tight ends versus Wake Forest slot receivers and tight ends, there's probably a level of talent there from the former to the latter that Clemson hasn't really gone up against yet. So, but yeah, I think above all else, Barrett Carter's a story there. Former 5-star recruit, and he is absolutely playing like one.
On offense, I think a lot of people have been saying, let's get the ball to Will Shipley a little bit more. Do you think that'll be a bigger part of the game plan this week?
Yeah, that's funny. Actually, I just finished up a story on that today. I was looking at some like snap counts and stuff. So far this season, he's been in on 38% of their offensive snaps, and he's taken 43% of their running back carries. That excludes DJ. Obviously, there's some game flow there. You don't need him playing a massive amount of snaps when you're up 20 points against, Georgia Tech or La Tech or Furman. They've had short fields. They've had one-play touchdown drives. They played their backup running backs. I think these next 2 games will probably give us a truer sense of, what that hot hand 3-back rotation they've talked about really looks like. But he has been maddeningly efficient. It's crazy. And yeah, I've definitely seen that, from fans on Twitter. And, that was something that Streeter and Sweeney both talked about today, just because, you have a performance like Shipley had against La Tech and, those questions are going to come. So, I mean, getting the ball to your stars is always a good thing. And I think above, keeping everybody happy, you want to win, and Clemson knows that. And, if it comes to the point where they need to ride Shipley, that was Streeter was saying Monday, I think his quote was, he'd carry the ball 45 times if we asked him to. This kid can play. If it comes to crunch time when they need, they can't risk anything, I think that snap count, that, carry percentage is probably going to rise. I think Clemson has 5 straight ACC games, not only ACC games, but Atlantic Division games coming up, Dabo said today. So, this is the time where you can't, mix up your rotation just to see what's working. You have to stick with what has worked, or you might be in trouble. So, Shipley against La Tech, really, he was the reason they won. I mentioned that touchdown to go up 20-6. Dang, I know you were there when La Tech, I think they made it 34-20 after a fourth quarter touchdown, and Clemson brought back in its starters, and it was just like Shipley gash run, 20 whatever yards, short pass, Shipley gash run, and then Kobe Pace punches it in, and Clemson's up, 3 touchdowns again, and the game's over. He has bailed them out of a lot of spots this year, and you'd be crazy to not, recognize that and lean on him going forward. And I think Clemson will.
What about a quick word on Dacari Collins? News of his pending transfer broke Wednesday.
It was interesting he started 3 games last year and came on kind of late. I think he started the bowl game. Big guy. I didn't realize he was 6'4". Yeah, I guess it's just kind of the way things go. The cream rises. And, Antonio Williams, man, oh my gosh, so impressive in so many ways. And obviously, I guess kind of Randall, coming back as quickly as he did, which is a crazy story in its own right. And, getting talked up so much and playing a little bit versus La Tech and looking good. Dabo said it today in his presser. Dacari probably just didn't like where he was on the depth chart. And, he wasn't ripping the guy or anything. He just kind of said, that this is the way college football is now. And, wished him well, but, just said we're going to move on. And, that's kind of what I feel like every big program is like nowadays, which it's not the worst idea to me. If something like that's a possibility, you always got to be prepared for it.
Yep. What have you seen from DJ? What do you expect from him? Because I think he's been okay, or better than okay. I think he's been pretty good so far.
Yeah, it was the throw to Antonio Williams last week really impressed me. That was just a beautiful ball. Kind of the way he's scrambled, and then I think he's found Bo Collins for a scramble goal touchdown in 2 straight games. And against Furman, there was this one play where he almost, I'm not comparing him to Cam Newton, but he had one of those Cam-esque plays where there's like a big 200 whatever pound defensive end dragging him down, and he was able to take 2 steps and kind of fling a sidearm to somebody to save a gain of 6 yards. He's obviously more athletic. I think anybody can tell you that. Dabo says that about every single week. Just the way he's been able to bail them out, use his legs. He's carried the ball a ton this year, and I think when he has time, which he's had more of over these first 3 games, he can be really impressive. He's had a number of balls that have been on the money, in my opinion, that people just dropped. I think he had a pretty back shoulder to DJ Williams that didn't get completed. Something else in the Georgia Tech game. He's put the ball in the right spot basically all the time. He has that one interception, which he owned up to. He said it was a bad read on his part, but even that was like a so-so tip ball. It was a little wide for Brandon Spector, but that could be completed. His one interception this year, was kind of a so-so play already. And I think he had a career high quarterback rating against Furman. He was good last week. I think that the overall thing is just Clemson is better around him, and he's better as a result. And that was kind of the off-season rallying cry. Let's be better around our quarterback, and he'll be better as a result. DJ's freshman year mistakes were obviously magnified. Sorry, not freshman year mistakes. First year starting mistakes were magnified because everybody else around him was also not good at times. And, the offensive line especially has given him the time these last 2 games. And when he has that time, I agree, he's looked pretty impressive. Obviously, here comes 2 big tests, but certainly from year 1 to year 2 of starting, easy to see the improvement.
One thing I wanted to ask was Wake Forest offense and the slow mesh really hasn't worked against Clemson's defensive front the last few years. Obviously, they won't totally abandon it, but what else might they be able to lean on a little more heavily than in the past that they do well that could throw a wrinkle at the Tigers defense?
Yeah, I'll just kind of lean on Dabo's assessment today, which I thought was smart. Just whether it's the mesh or the way they just run their offense, his words were kind of they create and force matchups to their advantage no matter what. Whether that's Hartman or certain receiver sets, I guess he's talking about here, varying their tempo. Sometimes they snap fast, sometimes they don't. Shoot, it worked last year. They put up 70 on Army, and we're kind of the ACC's leading scoring team. I think headed into that Clemson game, so like all the way till the very end. So yeah, specific wise, I don't have a ton there, but I do know that, from what Dabo said today, kind of what he was trying to drill into people, or just kind of make clear, Wake Forest isn't solely a slow mesh team. They use that, but they switch it up with other stuff too, and that's why, in his opinion, they're so dangerous. But at the same time, we mentioned how that pressure has helped them against the slow mesh, and that makes sense if you've got 4 or 5 NFL draft targets on your defensive line. You're probably not gonna be too affected by that. Where Wake can run that slow mesh against a less talented defensive line and do it to perfection. If there's one team you can't do it against this year on their schedule, obviously it's Clemson.
What's been the mood in interviews that you've been able to pick up on, sort of, whether it's in person, whether it's been the online interviews? Are they sensing that this is a game where they have to step up, they have to be a little more disciplined, a little more prepared because of the quality of the opponent? Or are they just kind of sticking to the, hey, we just want to be the best version of Clemson that we can be sort of mentality?
Yeah, all their guys have been saying all the right things every single week, not taking anybody for granted. But I think you could tell there's a tone this week that, this is the week you can't play around. Not that Clemson has been playing around. But, like I mentioned earlier, this is the week where you can't have that bad first quarter. This is the week where you can't have that bad third quarter stretch, because that bites you in the butt against Wake Forest, or maybe it doesn't against somebody else. I think the way they kind of laid out their season goals-wise every year is win the opener, and then after win the opener, your next thing is obviously win the division. Well, RIP to that next year, but this is the last year of having that goal. You can't win the division in Wake Forest on Saturday, but you can certainly put yourself in position to control your own destiny to win the division in Wake Forest on Saturday. KJ Henry he's a great interview, great quote, as I'm sure y'all know from keeping up with him. Winston-Salem native. Talked this week about that. They have a lot of veteran dudes on this team, a lot of guys who have experienced that absurd level of Clemson success, and then experienced last year, which is still 10-3 down here by Clemson national standards. Everybody else is happy with that. But I hope this group has perspective because of that. And, Dabo has preached that. And guys like KJ, like Jordan McFadden, have preached that to the younger guys. So I think they understand how big this one is. And I think they get donuts in Winston-Salem when they beat Wake Forest also is like a trend. So I'm sure they're looking forward to that. I think, yeah, that's right. No, I want one. Dang, I don't have one of those. But yeah, no, I think they certainly understand, the task at hand, because it is just another week, but stuff picks up now and it doesn't stop. And I think really having those first 3 games, I've learned a lot about Clemson watching those 3 games. I'm sure they, on the staff, the team, the players, they've learned a ton too, and seem ready to at least try to apply those lessons. And, they know where they're a little bit weaker, know they're a little bit better than last year. And yeah, it's going to be a fun matchup. I think Clemson's a 7-point favorite I saw, and that's like a 4-point favorite last year. Before that, they had been 20 plus in 8 of 9 years. So, the gap's definitely narrowing. But yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Big stretch for the schedule here, and it definitely starts at Wake Forest. And Chapel, we appreciate you bringing your extra perspective to the podcast and helping us out, and hope we can do this again later on the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate both of y'all for having me. It was a fun time.
Thanks, bud. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you, Chapel Fowler of the State. Great to have some outside viewpoints there. Daniel, what do you expect coming up against Wake this weekend?
I really expect to see the Tigers play well. I don't know if it's going to be like last year's game where it was just a domination from start to finish, but I'm looking forward to seeing this defense. Hopefully it's a healthy defense, get some guys back, and I'm really excited to see what the offense can do, and maybe let's see Will Shipley and that running game really get going this Saturday.
I mentioned in the previous episode, I'm not so sure that Sam Hartman can really be counted on to make so many mistakes early this year like he did last year. So the task may be a little bit tougher for the defense. Still wondering, like we talked about with Chapel, what wrinkles might they be able to throw at the Tigers? But I do think Clemson is the favorite for a reason. I think they should be favored coming into this game. I think the offense has been more cohesive, and I think that can continue against Wake Forest. It may be the other side of the ball that has a little more trouble. So if you're looking at an over-under, it might be a good week for the over. But I do think Clemson has everything they need to do to go up north, get this win, and come home with those Krispy Kremes like we talked about, right? We win, we dance. We have donuts this week.
Yeah, love donuts. Anytime you can win and get a donut, that's a good day.
We'll see if they can do it again this year. Well, I hope everyone has enjoyed this. We are glad you found us, Clemson family. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button if you're on a podcast. You'll stay up to speed every time there's big news around Clemson athletics. Our homepage has great resources with kickoff times as they're announced. We'll have that 6-day hold on the NC State game coming up this week. We'll be sure to get that out as quickly as possible. ClemsonKickoff.com is where you will find that. You can also play our old episodes. You can go back and hear our off-season in-depth preview of Wake Forest. You can find all our podcast links there too, all the major apps. Again, follow us on Twitter at Clemson Kickoff. We'll retweet news as it happens and give you some opinions along the way as well. Well, until the next episode after the Wake Forest game, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers. Now, see, now I'm going to have to do like 9 takes because
I did it.